Right now, as you sit where you are, there could be something standing just a few steps away from you, watching, listening, aware of your presence while you remain completely unaware of it. Not a shadow, not a ghost from imagination, but a real creation of Allah that lives, thinks, and moves in a world that overlaps with yours in ways you cannot perceive. This is not a story meant to entertain you. This is a truth rooted in the Quran and confirmed by the words of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Before we go deeper, take a moment and ground yourself in this reality, because what comes next may change how you look at the world around you. If you find this kind of knowledge meaningful, take a second to support this journey. Thank you for being here with Islamic Insight channel. And I would truly like to know where you are watching from, so share your country and become part of this growing community. If you feel connected to content that strengthens your understanding of Islam, then stay with us and subscribe, because there is so much more to uncover together. The idea that another world exists alongside ours is not a poetic metaphor in Islam. It is a direct statement from Revelation. Allah tells us clearly that He created the Jinn before humans, shaping them from a smokeless flame of fire, giving them life, awareness, and the ability to choose. This alone sets the foundation for something profound. You are not the only intelligent being walking this earth. There are others who share this space, not in a distant galaxy or hidden deep beneath the ocean, but here, right here, existing in a dimension or form that your senses cannot access. This realization begins to shift your perception of reality. The empty room you thought you were alone in may not be empty at all. The silence you hear may not truly be silent. And yet, this is not meant to terrify you. It is meant to humble you, to remind you that human perception is limited and that what you see is only a fraction of what exists. Allah describes their creation in a way that invites reflection. A smokeless flame of fire is not something you can easily picture. It is not like the fire you see burning wood or melting metal. It is something more refined, more subtle, something that does not leave behind the traces we are used to. Scholars have long reflected on this description, understanding that it points to a form of existence that is energetic, fluid, not bound by the density of physical matter like the human body. Humans were created from clay, something heavy, grounded, and stable. The Jinn were created from something light, dynamic, and elusive. This difference is not just poetic, it explains why their abilities differ so drastically from ours. They can move quickly, change form, and remain unseen, not because they are supernatural in the sense of being divine, but because their nature operates under a different set of physical rules. And yet, despite these differences, they are not beyond accountability. This is what makes their existence even more compelling. They are not forces of nature or abstract energies. They are individuals with minds, choices, and responsibilities. Among them are believers who worship Allah, who listen to the Quran, who follow guidance just as humans do, and among them are those who reject truth, who rebel, who spread harm and deception. This mirrors the human condition in a way that is both fascinating and sobering. It means that just as there are righteous people striving for goodness, there are righteous jinn doing the same. And just as there are humans who choose corruption, there are jinn who walk that path as well. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, gave us insight into how these two worlds interact, and one of the most striking statements is that they can see us from where we cannot see them. Pause on that for a moment and let it settle in your mind. Imagine being observed by beings that remain completely hidden from your senses. Not constantly, not in a way that should make you paranoid, but in a way that reminds you that you are not as alone as you might feel. This is part of the unseen, the realm that Allah has chosen not to fully reveal. There is wisdom in that concealment. If the veil were lifted completely, human life would not function the same way. Fear, distraction, and chaos would take over. Instead, we are given just enough knowledge to understand that the unseen exists, while still being able to live our lives with stability and focus. This veil is not a physical barrier you could touch or break through. It is more like a difference in frequency, a separation in the nature of existence itself. The Jinn occupy the same world, but not in the same way. They move through spaces we consider solid. They exist in places we consider empty, and yet they do not constantly interfere with human life. Their interactions are limited, controlled, and governed by the will of Allah. This is a crucial point, because it prevents the imagination from running into fear. Nothing in this unseen world operates outside of divine authority. There is no independent power that can act without permission. This keeps the balance intact. At the same time, the awareness of their presence brings a deeper sense of consciousness to everyday life. Simple actions take on new meaning. Saying the name of Allah before entering your home, before eating, before sleeping, these are not just habits. They are acts that establish boundaries, that protect, that remind both you and the unseen around you that you are living under the protection of your Creator. The remembrance of Allah is not only spiritual, it is practical. So it shapes your environment in ways you cannot fully perceive. As you continue to reflect on this, something begins to shift. The world no longer feels flat or purely physical. It feels layered, alive, filled with dimensions of existence that extend beyond your sight. And yet, instead of feeling overwhelmed, there is a strange sense of clarity. You begin to understand that human knowledge is limited by design. We are not meant to know everything. We are meant to know enough to recognize our place, to understand our purpose, and to trust in what has been revealed. There is a quiet power in that understanding. You do not need to see the unseen to believe in it. You do not need to fully comprehend its mechanics to accept its reality. The Quran does not ask you to imagine, it asks you to trust. And when you do, the unseen world of the Jinn is no longer a mystery that creates fear. It becomes a sign, a reminder that existence is far greater than what your eyes can capture, and that beyond everything you can perceive, there is a Creator who sees it all, controls it all, and invites you to walk through this world with awareness, humility, and unwavering faith. Once you begin to understand that the Jinn are not mindless forces, but conscious beings with choice, the entire picture becomes deeper and more unsettling in a quiet, thoughtful way. They are not bound to obedience like the angels, nor are they driven purely by instinct like animals. They think, they decide, they choose paths, and those paths carry consequences. This is clearly affirmed in the Quran when Allah tells us that among the Jinn are those who submit and those who deviate, those who believe and those who reject. This means there are entire communities among them, societies that mirror aspects of human life, where belief is debated, where truth is accepted or denied, where actions are taken with intention and purpose. It is not a chaotic realm of shadows, as people often imagine, but a structured existence governed by the same ultimate authority. When you reflect on this, it begins to feel as though there are parallel stories unfolding all around you, unseen narratives of guidance and misguidance, obedience and rebellion, all happening in a world that overlaps with yours, without ever fully revealing itself. And this is where the concept of accountability becomes incredibly powerful. The Jinn are not free to act without consequence. Just like humans, they are created to worship Allah. And they will be judged based on their choices. There will be those among them who enter paradise and those who face punishment, not because of their nature, but because of their decisions. This removes any idea that they are inherently evil or inherently superior. It places them on a level of moral responsibility that aligns with humanity, even if their physical nature is entirely different. It also reminds you that guidance is not limited to one form of creation. The message of truth extends beyond what we can see, reaching into realms that operate under different rules, yet answer to the same creator. Among all the jinn, there is one story that stands above the rest, not because it is distant or irrelevant, but because it directly shapes human experience, even today. The story of Iblis is not simply about a being who disobeyed. It is about the nature of arrogance and the danger of self-perception. Iblis was not an ordinary jinn. He had reached a level of devotion that elevated him among the angels, placing him in a position of honor and closeness. Yet when the command came to prostrate to Adam, peace be upon him, Iblis refused. Not out of confusion, not because he did not understand the command, but because he believed he knew better. He looked at Adam and saw clay, something heavy and lowly, and he looked at himself and saw fire, something he believed to be superior. That comparison, that moment of self-elevation, became the root of his downfall. This is what makes the story so relevant. It shows that knowledge alone is not enough, that worship alone is not enough if the heart is poisoned by arrogance. Iblis did not deny the existence of Allah. Instead, he spoke directly to him, yet he chose to disobey because he placed his own judgment above divine command. That single act transformed him from a devoted being into Shaitan, the one who whispers, the one who misleads, the one who seeks to pull others down the same path of arrogance and disobedience. And even then, his power was not unlimited. When he asked for respite until the day of judgment, it was granted, but with clear boundaries. He could not force anyone to follow him. He could only call, suggest, decorate falsehood, and wait for people to respond. This is where the interaction between humans and jinn becomes more personal, more immediate. The influence of Shaitan and those who follow him does not always come in dramatic or visible ways. It often comes quietly, through thoughts that seem like your own, through doubts that appear without warning, through subtle pushes toward actions you know you should avoid. This is what is described as whispering, and it is something every human experiences. It does not mean you are possessed or controlled. It means you are being tested. The presence of these whispers is part of the test of life, part of the struggle to choose what is right, even when something within you is urging you in another direction. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, taught that these whispers can reach the heart, but they do not define you unless you act upon them. This distinction is crucial. It means that the battlefield is internal, that the struggle is not about eliminating thoughts entirely, but about recognizing them, resisting them, and choosing differently. It also means that awareness is your first line of defense. When you understand that not every thought originates from your own intention, you gain the ability to step back and evaluate, rather than react. There are also moments where the interaction becomes stronger, where the influence of jinn goes beyond whispers. Authentic narrations confirm that possession can occur, though it is not as widespread or as uncontrolled as popular culture suggests. It happens under specific circumstances and always within the limits set by Allah. Even in those cases, the believer is not left without protection. The Quran itself becomes a source of healing, a means of driving away harmful presence, not through ritual in the theatrical sense, but through sincere recitation and reliance on Allah. Verses such as Ayat al-Kursi, the closing verses of Surah al-Baqarah, and consistent remembrance create a state of protection that is not visible, yet deeply effective. This is one of the most important aspects to understand. Islam does not present the unseen as something that should dominate your thoughts or fill you with fear. It presents it as a reality that you acknowledge while remaining grounded in trust. The power of the jinn is real, but it is limited. Their influence exists, but it is not absolute. They cannot harm you without permission, they cannot control your destiny, and they cannot override your free will. This balance keeps the believer stable, aware without being overwhelmed, cautious without becoming paranoid. And when you think about it, this balance is what allows life to function as it does. if the unseen were fully visible. If every jinn could be seen moving around you, interacting openly, the human experience would change completely. Focus would be lost, fear would dominate, and the clarity of choice would be clouded by constant distraction. Instead, the veil remains, allowing you to live your life while still being aware that there is more beyond what you can see. It is a reminder that your actions are not limited to what is visible, that your choices carry weight not just in this world, but in a reality that extends far beyond it. So you move forward with that awareness, not in fear, but in understanding. You guard your thoughts, you strengthen your connection to Allah, and you recognize that every moment is an opportunity to choose the path that leads to guidance. The unseen world does not exist to frighten you. So it exists to remind you that life is a test, that you are not alone in that test, and that ultimately everything returns to the one who created both the seen and the unseen, the one who knows every whisper, every intention, and every choice you make. When you begin to explore the abilities of the jinn, one of the most striking aspects that emerges is their relationship with movement, distance, and speed. It is not simply that they move faster than humans. It is that their entire interaction with space seems fundamentally different. The Quran gives us a powerful glimpse into this through the story of Prophet Sulaiman, peace be upon him, a prophet who was granted authority over the jinn by the permission of Allah. In that account, when the throne of the Queen of Sheba was mentioned, a strong jinn stood forward and declared that he could bring it before Suleiman could rise from his place. This was not presented as an exaggeration or a symbolic statement. It was a clear indication of capability, a demonstration of what was possible within the nature of these beings. Pause for a moment and really consider what that implies. A throne, not a small object, not something easily carried, but a structure of weight and significance, transported across a vast distance in what would amount to a very short span of time. This is not something that fits within human understanding of movement. We think in terms of travel, of crossing space step by step, moment by moment. The jinn, however, appear to operate with a different relationship to distance itself. It is as if space does not confine them in the same way it confines us. Now, their speed is not merely faster motion, but a form of movement that interacts with the world in a way we cannot replicate. And yet, even in that moment, something even more remarkable occurred. Another being, described as one who had knowledge from the book, brought the throne in the blink of an eye, faster than the jinn who had already demonstrated extraordinary ability. This contrast is important because it shows that even the power of the jinn has limits. It is impressive, it is beyond human capability, but it is not the highest form of power. There are layers of ability within creation, and above all of them is the will of Allah, who grants and withholds as He chooses. This keeps the understanding balanced. You recognize the strength of the jinn, but you do not elevate them beyond their place. And their speed also explains many of the characteristics attributed to them in authentic sources. They can travel long distances quickly, they can appear in different locations in short periods, and they can access spaces that humans would struggle to reach. This is not because they break the laws of creation, but because they exist within a framework of those laws that is different from ours. Their origin from smokeless fire suggests a form that is less bound by density, less restricted by the heaviness that defines the human body. Where we are slowed by gravity, by friction, by physical limitation, they seem to move with a fluidity that bypasses many of those constraints. This ability also raises an important point about perception. So just because something moves in a way that feels impossible to you does not mean it is supernatural in the sense of being outside creation. It may simply mean that it operates under rules you do not yet understand. Islam consistently brings you back to this idea that the unseen is not necessarily chaotic or magical, but structured and purposeful, even if hidden. The jinn are part of that structure. Their abilities are not random. They are defined, limited, and governed by the same divine authority that governs everything else. As you reflect on this, the idea of unseen layers of reality begins to feel less abstract and more grounded. And this is where modern discussions, particularly in physics, begin to intersect in an interesting way, not as confirmation, but as a point of reflection. There are theories that suggest that the universe is not limited to the dimensions we directly experience. String theory, for example, proposes that reality may consist of multiple dimensions beyond the familiar 3 dimensions of space and one of time. These additional dimensions are not visible, not because they do not exist, but because they are compacted or exist in a way that human senses cannot detect. Now, Islam does not depend on these theories, and belief in the unseen does not require scientific validation. The existence of the Jinn is already established through revelation, which stands independent of human discovery. However, when you hear ideas like this, it opens a door to a deeper kind of thinking. It allows you to consider that what Islam has described for centuries, the existence of beings who share our world yet remain hidden, may not be as far removed from the structure of reality as it first appears. If there are dimensions beyond our perception, then the idea of a parallel existence becomes easier to conceptualize. Imagine a reality where 2 layers exist in the same space but do not fully interact because they operate on different levels of existence. You could walk through a room completely unaware that another form of life exists within the same coordinates, simply because your senses are not designed to perceive it. This does not require those beings to be far away or disconnected. It simply requires a difference in how existence is structured. Islam has already introduced this concept in its own way by describing the unseen, the world of the Jinn, and the veil that separates them from us. But it is crucial to remain grounded here. Theories like string theory are human attempts to understand the universe. They are not definitive, and they change as knowledge evolves. Islam, on the other hand, provides certainty in what it reveals while leaving space for curiosity in what it does not. The connection between these ideas is not something to build belief upon, but something to reflect on with humility. It reminds you that human understanding is always developing, always catching up, always limited. What matters most is the principle that the unseen exists, that reality is deeper than what your eyes can capture, and that your role is not to uncover every hidden detail, but to live with awareness of what has been revealed. The existence of the Jinn is part of that awareness. Their ability to move quickly, to interact with space differently, to exist alongside you without being seen, all of this points to a world that is far more complex than it appears on the surface. And yet, despite all of this complexity, your path remains simple. You are not asked to chase the unseen, to investigate it endlessly, or to become consumed by it. You're asked to acknowledge it, to protect yourself through remembrance, and to stay focused on your purpose. The unseen is not there to distract you from your life. It is there to remind you that your life is part of something much larger, something that extends beyond what you can measure or control. There is a quiet strength in accepting that. You do not need to understand every mechanism of existence to walk the right path. You do not need to see every dimension to believe in the Creator of all dimensions. What you need is clarity in what has been revealed, and trust in the one who revealed it. And when you carry that understanding with you, the idea of unseen worlds no longer feels distant or strange. It becomes a natural part of how you see reality, a reminder that what is hidden is not absent, and that beyond everything you perceive, there is a deeper order, perfectly designed, perfectly controlled, and always under the authority of Allah. There comes a point in this journey where curiosity naturally begins to stretch beyond its limits, where the mind starts asking questions that feel important, even urgent. How exactly do the Jinn exist within this world? What do they truly look like in their original form? How do they move so freely? How close are they to us at any given moment? These questions are not wrong in themselves. They reflect a desire to understand, to explore, to make sense of what has been revealed. But this is where Islam introduces something deeply important, something that protects the believer from going too far into speculation. There is a boundary placed around knowledge, especially when it comes to the unseen, and that boundary is not a restriction meant to frustrate you. It is a protection designed to keep your understanding clear and your faith grounded. The unseen, known as al-ghaib, is a category of knowledge that belongs primarily to Allah. What has been revealed about it is intentional and sufficient. The Quran and the authentic sayings of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, give us glimpses, enough to establish belief, enough to guide behavior, enough to warn and to reassure. But they do not open every door. They do not explain every mechanism, every detail, every hidden layer. And that is by design. Because if human beings were left to fill in those gaps entirely on their own, imagination would take over, and imagination without guidance can quickly lead to distortion. You can already see how this happens in different cultures, where the concept of unseen beings becomes exaggerated, where stories are built on fear rather than truth, where myths grow far beyond what was ever revealed. Islam cuts through that confusion with clarity. It affirms the existence of the Jinn. It explains their origin. It describes their abilities in specific contexts, and then it stops. It does not encourage obsession. It does not invite endless investigation into their world. Instead, it redirects your focus back to what truly matters. Your purpose is not to uncover the full nature of the unseen. Your purpose is to live in obedience to Allah, to recognize His signs, and to prepare for what comes after this life. There is a quiet wisdom in this limitation that becomes clearer the more you reflect on it. Human beings have a natural tendency to chase what they cannot fully grasp. The unknown becomes attractive, even addictive. But not all knowledge benefits you. Some knowledge distracts, some misleads, and some opens doors that are better left closed. By placing boundaries, Islam ensures that your curiosity does not pull you away from your purpose. It keeps your attention anchored in what is essential, rather than letting it drift into endless speculation. At the same time, this does not mean that you ignore the unseen or pretend it does not exist. It means you engage with it correctly. You accept what has been revealed, you respect what has been concealed, and you trust that what you do not know is known perfectly by Allah. This balance is what gives a believer stability. You are aware, but not overwhelmed. You are informed, but not consumed. You are curious, but not lost in curiosity. And when you carry that balance into your daily life, it transforms how you move through the world. You begin to realize that awareness of the unseen is not about fear, it is about consciousness. It is about understanding that your actions are not limited to what other people can see. There is a deeper level of accountability that exists beyond human observation. The Jinn may see you from where you cannot see them, the angels record your deeds, and Allah is fully aware of every intention. And every thought, every choice. This awareness sharpens your sense of responsibility. It makes your actions more deliberate, your words more measured, your thoughts more guarded. And this leads naturally into the concept of protection, because once you understand that there are influences around you that you cannot see, you begin to appreciate the tools that Islam provides to guard yourself. These tools are not complicated. That is part of their strength. They are simple, consistent, and deeply rooted in remembrance of Allah. Saying the name of Allah before entering your home, before eating, before beginning anything important. These are not small habits. They are acts that establish a boundary, that create a form of protection that is not visible but is very real. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, taught that when a person enters their home and mentions the name of Allah, Shaitan says to his companions that there is no place for them to stay that night. When the name of Allah is mentioned before eating, shaitan is denied a share in that meal. These are not abstract teachings, they are practical instructions that shape your environment in ways you cannot fully perceive. They turn ordinary moments into acts of protection, transforming daily routines into shields against unseen harm. The recitation of the Quran carries an even deeper level of protection. Ayat al-Kursi is described in authentic narrations as a powerful safeguard, especially when recited before sleep. The last 2 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah are said to be sufficient for the night, creating a barrier that protects the believer. These are not symbolic gestures. They are direct means of protection, grounded in revelation, tested and confirmed through the teachings of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. But beyond specific recitations, there is a broader principle at work. The closer you are to Allah, the stronger your protection becomes. It is not just about saying certain words at certain times. It is about building a state of connection, a constant awareness that keeps your heart aligned with your Creator. When that connection is strong, the influence of shaitan weakens. His whispers become less convincing, his presence less effective, his attempts easier to recognize and resist. This does not mean that you will never face difficulty, or that you will be completely free from negative thoughts. The test of life remains. But it does mean that you are not vulnerable in the way you might have been without that connection. You are equipped, protected, guided. You have what you need to navigate both the seen and the unseen aspects of this world. And perhaps the most powerful realization in all of this is that you are never left alone. Not in the sense of being watched by unseen beings, but in the sense of being supported by divine guidance. The same Lord who created the Jinn, who knows every hidden detail of their existence, who controls their abilities and limits their influence, is the one who is protecting you. Nothing reaches you without his permission. Nothing escapes his knowledge. This understanding replaces fear with trust. It shifts your perspective from vulnerability to reliance. So instead of becoming consumed by questions about what you cannot see, you begin to focus on how you live within what you have been shown. You strengthen your remembrance, you guard your actions, you stay aware without becoming anxious, and in doing so, you find a kind of balance that is both calming and empowering. The unseen remains unseen, but it no longer feels distant or threatening. It becomes part of a larger reality that you move through with clarity, guided by revelation, protected by remembrance, and grounded in the certainty that everything, both seen and unseen, is under the control of Allah. As everything begins to come together, one truth rises above all the details, above the mystery, above the curiosity that pulls you deeper into this subject. The Jinn are not a separate story running alongside humanity without connection. They are part of the same grand reality, moving toward the same final moment, standing before the same Creator, and answering to the same ultimate justice. This is something that is often overlooked, yet it changes everything when you fully understand it. The unseen world is not detached from the outcome of existence. It is bound to it just as tightly as the world you live in. On the day of judgment, when everything hidden is brought forward, when every secret is exposed, when every action is weighed with absolute precision, the Jinn will be there alongside humankind. This is not a symbolic gathering. It is a real assembly, one that includes every conscious being that was given choice and responsibility. The Quran speaks directly to both humans and Jinn, addressing them together, reminding them that they were sent messengers, that they were given guidance, that they were not left without direction. This shared address is powerful because it removes any illusion that one group was favored with knowledge, while the other was left in darkness. The truth reached both worlds, and both worlds will answer for how they responded. Imagine that moment not as something distant or abstract, but as something inevitable. Every Jinn who chose belief, who followed guidance, who resisted the pull of shaitan, will stand with a record of their actions just as a believer among humans would. And every jinn who chose rebellion, who spread harm, who rejected truth despite knowing it, will stand with the weight of those choices upon them. There is no escape from that reality, no hidden place, no unseen dimension that can shield anyone from accountability. The same Lord who allowed them to move unseen in this world will bring them fully into view in the next. This shared destiny creates a connection that goes beyond physical interaction. It means that the story of existence is not limited to what you can observe. It extends into realms that you cannot access, yet it converges at a single point where everything becomes clear. The believer understands this and begins to see life differently. It is no longer just about navigating the visible world, about managing what can be touched and measured. It becomes about preparing for a reality that includes both the seen and the unseen. A reality where every choice matters, where nothing is overlooked. And this is where the concept of justice becomes incredibly profound. In this world, there are moments where things seem unbalanced, where harm goes unanswered, where truth is ignored or hidden. But the day of judgment removes all of that uncertainty. Every whisper that led someone astray, every act of deception, every moment of arrogance or obedience, it will all be accounted for with a level of fairness that no human system could ever achieve. The jinn who misled others will not escape responsibility, and those who chose righteousness will not be forgotten. The scale is perfect, the judgment is absolute, and the outcome is final. For the believer, this is not meant to create fear alone. It is meant to create clarity. It is a reminder that life is not random, that actions are not meaningless, that everything you do is part of a larger narrative that leads to a definitive end. Says when you understand that even the unseen beings are bound by this same system of accountability, it reinforces the idea that no one is beyond the reach of justice and no action is too small to matter. Then your perspective begins to widen even further. You start to realize that the existence of the jinn is not just a fascinating detail about the unseen. It is a sign, a reminder that reality is layered, that what you experience is only one part of a much larger design. The world you see is not the full picture. It is a surface, a visible layer that sits on top of deeper structures, deeper truths that are hidden from your senses, but not from your creator. This realization brings with it a kind of quiet transformation. You begin to move through life with a deeper awareness, not in a way that makes you anxious, but in a way that makes you more present, more conscious of your actions and intentions. You understand that you are not navigating an empty space, but a reality filled with meaning, filled with purpose, filled with layers that extend beyond your perception. And yet, despite all of that complexity, your role remains clear. You're not here to uncover every hidden detail. You're not here to chase the unseen or to become consumed by what you cannot fully understand. You're here to live with awareness, to act with sincerity, to follow the guidance that has been given to you. The unseen world does not exist to distract you from your purpose. It exists to reinforce it. It reminds you that there is more to existence than what you can measure, that there is a reality beyond this one where everything will be made clear. And when you hold on to that understanding, something shifts within you. The fear of the unknown begins to fade, replaced by a sense of trust. You begin to see that the same Allah who created the jinn, who controls their abilities, who knows every hidden movement and every silent whisper, is the one who is guiding you, protecting you, and calling you toward him. There is no randomness in that. There is no chaos beyond his control. Everything, both seen and unseen, is part of a perfectly ordered system. So you move forward with that certainty. You live your life not as someone surrounded by unknown threats, but as someone held within divine awareness. You recognize that the unseen is not something to fear, but something to respect, something that points you back to your Creator. And in the end, that is the greatest secret of all. The unseen world is not the destination of your curiosity. It is a signpost directing you toward a greater truth, a truth that will one day be fully revealed when the veil is lifted, when every hidden thing is brought into the light, and when you stand before the one who knew it all along.